Thank you. Hope you're having a fine conference till now. So, as you already know, the topic is how to pitch your game. Okay, so wait a sec. Okay, so the hidden subtitle of this speech is how to pitch your game when you're a nobody. Okay, let's start with who I am. I'm Łukasz Hacura. You can reach me at this email if you like. I started my career as a gameplay programmer, then I went to production, and around 4 years ago I co-founded my company, Anshar Studios. And Anshar Studios is mostly a third-party company. We're pitching a lot to publishers, we're pitching a lot to clients to, well, try to find work and find funding for our projects. And I wanted to share with you my experiences. I was involved in 16 commercial release titles on 7 different platforms, and I'm still a nobody because none of those games were like a big success. So let's first establish who is a somebody, okay? As opposed to mention nobody. Someone who has worked on either a game that has a spectacular financial success, universal critical acclaim, both of the above. And if you worked on those titles, pitching comes, well, it's not easy because pitching is always hard, but you have a lot of leverage. You can leverage your experience working on those titles, on such titles. And for example, and one more thing, testing Witcher 3 doesn't count. Okay, you have to actually have an impact on the game you were creating. I don't know, you have a creative director, lead designer, maybe some kind of a senior programmer that implemented this cool feature that made this game cool, whatever. But, you know, you had to have an impact on the game to be a somebody. So for example, these guys, I don't know if you recognize the like similar vibe, what connects those three guys, they all had a very successful Kickstarter campaigns. It's Brian Fargo, it's Swen from Divinity Original Sin 2 and 1, it's Chris Avalone with Pillars of Eternity, right? So those guys got millions by pitching their games to public, but they already had like 20 years experience of developing RPG games. Maybe some of you have this experience, but most of us don't, and that's why I'm referring to us as nobodies, because we have to work harder than Team Schafer to get our money, right? Sorry, I have to, because my laptop is like way over there. Oh, this is it. So, Team Schafer is, people actually throw money at him, right, when he starts a Kickstarter campaign. Okay, so 10 things I learned to pitch a good game. First, know your audience. What I like to distinct is civilians and game developers. By civilians, I mean everybody who's not a game developer. So for example, investor, that can be a financial investor, an IT company, or it can be a client, for example, marketing or a PR company that wants you to create this cool video game that will be part of a marketing campaign. It can be gamers if you go to crowdfunding. And then you have game developers. And depending on who are you pitching to, you're going to have different levels of abstract in your pitch, and you have different points of focus. For example, you're not going to deliver like a huge market analysis to a publisher in a particular genre when he's actually, like, all his games are in this genre, right? He already knows the market. You don't need to lay it down to him. For example, Paradox already knows what like space simulation kind of strategy games look like, right? And they know what is the landscape there. What they're interested is, why is your game different? Why is your game better? What is unique about your game? Why, on the other hand, if you pitch to an investor who has usually no idea how the landscape in game development and game publishing looks like, they want to know that there is an actual need for a space strategy game, for example, right? They want to know, how does our game fit into that landscape? Is there an actual need for this kind of product? Oh yes, and civilians will refer to games as products. Maybe not gamers. Okay, so remember who you pitch to and adjust accordingly. Secondly, adjust your content to the type of communication. You're going to pitch like in different words when you send an email, if it's a face-to-face, if it's an elevator pitch, or if it's a pitch presentation. When you're sending an email, usually you want to keep it short with an attachment, preferably a pitch document, which I'll be touching a little bit more on later on how to create a pitch document. Don't send a game design document, a GDD, never, like ever. Nobody's going to read that, and you'll just discourage people from talking to you further. So like simple few words. Hey, this is me. I have an idea of the game. Check out the attachment. Let's talk, let's connect, let's meet at next event or whatever, right? And it would be great if you wouldn't pitch, try to email a random person, but somebody who, for example, you at least exchange business cards on some game event or a conference like Digital Dragons. Okay, an elevator pitch is a very like a flash way of saying what your game is about. It's like, it can be a 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes, depends, because sometimes there are pitching sessions where people are actually counted, like there's a clock and you have 2 minutes, you pitch to investors, and this is it. So you need to compress in those 2 minutes why your game is awesome and how to convey that information in a very short period of time. And I'm going to touch on that later also. And last, the one thing that we all dream of is to have a pitch presentation. So to have like all the time in the world, like half an hour, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, whole board of the company we're pitching to, and a lot of time to convey our idea. But that usually doesn't happen. Sometimes that happens, but almost never at the like first try, right? First you have to send this email or exchange this business card. So okay, I talked a lot about, mentioned earlier that you're going to have a pitch document, preferably something that you're going to send out. So when we started our company, we first, okay, we need a project. We're going to pitch a couple of projects to a couple of companies. So we created a couple of pitches. So as all programmers do at first, I did my research on, okay, so how does the pitch structure, how does the pitch should be structured, etc. Read a ton of Gamma Sutra articles, some to-dos, don'ts, etc. But actually a pitch structure in all of those is very, very similar, and this is what I came up with. First, you have a game overview. It should be 1 page, okay? Because this is a page that usually everybody's going to read, like CEO is going to read only that page, right? So you get 1 page. On this page you have your title, you have your target group, you have your platforms, you have your genre, and you have like 2 sentence tops what your game is about. And achieving that in 2 sentences, conveying a whole complex information about what your game is about, it's one of the hardest things in pitching, but you have to do that. I'm going to expand on that also later. So it must be most clear as you can possibly think of. And then you have next page, which is game setting, which is basically the same thing, those 2 sentences made into a like half-pager. Okay? So there you can go a little bit into detail. But don't tell the story, don't tell the lore or whatever, all this, just say, okay, so the setting of the game is, it's an FPS shooter in a cyberpunk era with cool skills or whatever your game is about, but keep to the essentials. Then you go into gameplay systems and features, also like 1 page tops, where you focus mostly on USPs, obviously, so like unique things that are in your project, but usually your project is not 100% innovative, right? Like almost no projects are 100% innovative. So you're going to have gameplay settings and features that are present in other games. Mention that and put those games that you like to copy those mechanics from as references, because that puts already an image in their head. Okay, so it's going to be the same view as Diablo 3, okay, but in cyberpunk, for example. Okay, story synopsis should be like game overview, like 2 sentences, if this game is not story-based. If it's a story-based game, like an adventure game or an RPG, you can dig a little bit more into it. But if it's like action game or a platformer, Keep it short, keep it simple. Art style, preferably with mock-up screenshots or key art or concept art made by your artist. That would be ideal. If you cannot afford that, can do this, then just put in references from other games that you want to catch the same atmosphere in your game. And I don't include this always, but usually the next step, if somebody likes a pitch and you have like initial agreement, usually the next step is the prototype. So if the next step is prototype, you can already mention what do you want to prove in the prototype, what kind of features are there going to be in the prototype, and how long it's going to take to develop, etc. So the whole pitch should be like anything between 3 and 5 pages. So it's a very short document. Imagine pitching a very big, complex game in 3 to 5 pages. If you think it's difficult, it's true, but this is something that you should always have this document, okay? You can create a game without game design document. Like most people develop games without like in detail game design documents, but everybody who's looking for funding needs to create a pitch. At this URL, you will find a sample of one of our older pitches that follows that structure. You can look it up. Okay, use references. I already mentioned it previously, but this is probably one of the most important things in pitching is using references, because like most of the communication done only by word is like misunderstood, and you're thinking about different things, you're saying something, and you're putting a different image into the other person's head. While using a reference, yeah, because it's gonna be like this, but with this change, adding that image to their head can drastically improve communication. I'm gonna use examples here from last year's big indie pitch at Gamescom, and the movie is from How to Judge Indie Games. It was this kind of a comedy show where we pitched our ideas to Miller and he basically grinded us. But it's a good use case. Okay, so listen to this guy.
My indie game I think you're going to love because it's all about the heist. It's Pac-Man meets the movie Heat.
Okay, so what this guy essentially said is my indie game you're going to love because it's all about the heist. It's Pac-Man meets the movie Heat. So I don't necessarily approve of the you're going to love thing, because if you're already like, it feels like you're forcing him to love your idea. So I personally would cut it out. But it's all about the heist. It's Pac-Man meets the movie Heat. It's pure gold, okay? This is the way you pitch your idea. Because, okay, so it's going to be like Pac-Man mechanics, but it's going to be like haste roll, okay, so I'm going to do this, and that. You already have your imagination going on how this game is going to look like. And this is the way you should pitch games. But during that, you should focus on the essential. Because the same guy then did that.
In this game, essentially, you're this guy, Chris Knox, and you're a former special operations guy, and your sister's been kidnapped, and this nefarious crime syndicate is making you rob stuff.
I don't care. I don't really care. In a game that have Pac-Man mechanics, I don't care. This can be maybe in that story synopsis, like a small part of it or whatever, but never do it in a face-to-face pitch, okay? People are very hard, try very hard to convey an idea by saying what the world is about, but if it's not an essential part of your game, for example, I don't know, Lords of the Fallen, the essential part of the game was that the God risen and people killed him, and now it's like aftermath of the fact that the god was killed like thousands of years ago or something, right? Maybe it was important with Lords of the Fallen, but with most games, lore is not that important, especially not in the pitch phase. So always focus on the essentials. So okay, let's have a question time. I'm stealing this question from Adrian Chmielarz from last time. No, I'm just gonna shout it. How would you pitch a Batman IP-based game? Like 1 sentence. No? No takers? You're Batman. Like this is it, okay? Because nothing you can say about a Batman IP-based game is going to make it cooler than the fact that you're Batman, okay? You have all these cool gadgets, you're kicking the shit out of everybody, you're awesome because you're Batman, and this is it. Focus on the essentials, okay? So let's reverse this. Those are actual pitching quotes from other products. So, okay, this is an easy one. Time moves only when you move, right? Obviously. That is a great pitch line. I know that, and it's an idea for a game in one sentence. You cannot pitch better than that. Okay, that's also an easy one, right? That's the movie Seven. And actually, I'm going to do a lot of movie references here because I think that we can learn a lot from the movie industry. I'm going to also touch on that later. So the last one is, and this is an actual summary of a script by a professional script reviewer in Hollywood, okay? What is it? Sorry? Alien? Yeah, it's Alien. It's the first one, the first Alien movie. So this is what you're looking for, and you need to try to wrap your head around it. Like, okay, so if I would have to summarize my game in one sentence, what would that be? If you don't have that one sentence, you probably don't have this very clear idea about this game, and you should have that. Okay, so number 5 is make them believe you can pull it off. Because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if the other person that is listening to your pitch doesn't believe that it's feasible or is it doable by you or your team, then he's not going to give you the money anyway. He's just going to think, okay, that's a really great idea, but this guy or she can't pull it off, right? Because it's not about ideas, it's about the ideas you make happen. So this is how we pitched our team to a civilian investor a couple of years ago when we were looking for funding. So we were like, okay, we're 8 people. We're actually 7 dudes and a chick. So that is an actual reference here. We worked on 7 different platforms. We released 21 titles. And this like speaks to the imagination of the investor, okay? So they have experience. They already done stuff. And you need to be like, you don't need to be cocky. Maybe the Gears of War reference was a little bit cocky, but it was to a civilian investor. So he didn't know that. But basically, you need to prove that you can do it, okay? If you're a student, like with 0 experience, don't pitch an MMORPG, right? It seems kind of obvious, but you would be surprised. So yeah. Okay, have a prototype, and this is a hard one because like everybody, and right now we live in a great landscape, like money is on the street, like literally. There are many companies that will throw money at you if you have a prototype, okay? Like not that many companies that will give you money just on a pitch, not that many, especially if you're a nobody like me. But if you have a really good prototype, your chances of getting funded are skyrocketing. So, and preferably it should be a vertical slice. If somebody doesn't know the difference, like the prototype is like a tech demo that checks out like a particular mechanics of a game to make like feel it out, is it working correctly, etc. While vertical slice is trying to achieve final game quality in a very small, tiny, like 2 minutes, 5 minutes of gameplay, right? But like a final render when you do a trailer. So it's obviously more expensive to do because you have final art, final UI. You have to be very thorough in your design to actually know how this vertical slice is going to feel. But if you're going to have that, then also your chances of being funded skyrocket because an investor will look like this. Okay, so we already have 5 minutes of it. So it just multiply it, and then we're golden, right? So this way of thinking makes it easier for you to get funding. So okay, this is like a sample screenshot for a prototype. It's obviously like a tech demo. We see some blocks, we see a katana, some crosshair. This is a prototype that tests some mechanics. Now this looks a lot cooler, right? And it's also a prototype. It's not even a vertical slice. It was a second version of their prototype of Superhot while they were doing a Kickstarter campaign, okay? So, examples of how to do it. The first mentioned Superhot. Their first prototype was a game jam build and it was awesome. Hearthstone, they actually had a paper prototype. And it's not because it was a card-based game and they could do it, it's because they took all their programmers from the team to help on another project and they were actually forced to do a paper prototype. But it worked, right? And for some types of games, a paper prototype is a valid alternative. Actually, I think Kacper had a speech last year, or a workshop, I think it was a workshop, here on Digital Dragons on paper prototyping, or some other conference, I'm sorry. But it was Kacper from Valmonor. GC, yeah, sorry. Okay, so you can do it with a lot of genres, right? Bad examples is Wastelands 2, for example. Obviously, it was a great game. Director's Cut was a great game. Obviously, it got immensely funded, like $4 million on Kickstarter. But basically, Brian Fargo just talked the whole movie, right? Most of you, like me for sure, we can't do that, right? We can't just, okay, I have this great idea for a game, give me money. So it's not going to work. And actually, right now, it's getting harder and harder because, as we know, Black Room, which Romero actually also did the same thing that Brian Fargo did, and he pulled the Kickstarter because it wasn't performing so good, right? So even now, people that are somebody having a problem because people are getting suspicious of Kickstarter in general. Okay, we can learn a lot from the movie industry on how to do a good prototype. If you know the history of Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds with a couple of his friends, 2 I think, or 3, did a script on this. They sent it to the movie studios. Then it was shelved for a couple of years. Then they had a little bit of money to do a prototype, and this is it. This is the prototype, which is for Hollywood standards is quite crude, right? Because it's 100% CGI. But then it again was shelved for a couple of years. Then it magically leaked online. Everybody went crazy, and that's how Deadpool got funded. But usually doing, like, because this is almost like a vertical slice, you can feel the atmosphere, you can hear the jokes of Deadpool, etc. But you can actually do it much cheaper. And another example is Looper, and this is how Looper got pitched.
Time travel has not been invented, but in 30 years it will be. It will be very illegal, used only by large criminal groups, my employers. When they need someone in the future to disappear, they grab him, zap him back in time to me. So he vanishes from the future, and I kill a man who does not yet exist. Assassins like me are called loopers. We shoot fish in a barrel. We are well paid. We live the good life while the world crumbles around us. And the only rule is, when the man appears, you pull the trigger. Easy. Until a man appeared who was me. I broke the rule. Now I'm a fugitive. I'm hunted. And there's only one way out. I'm gonna find myself. I'm gonna kill him.
Okay, so how can you can see that this wasn't like very expensive. Like it's cutouts from other movies, very crude art, some voiceover, and this is it. And this is, for example, a way you can pitch actually a video game. We actually tried it once internally, so be mindful. This what I'm showing you right now. It's an internal pitch, okay? It's an internal pitch for a trailer we did for Detached. And I did it, and I'm a programmer also, mind that.
Most people stranded in the wild die of shame. They ask themselves, how could I allow this to happen? What could I have done differently? They sit down, and they die. Because they did one thing that could save their lives. They did not think. I hope this rule applies to space as well.
Okay, it took me like one evening to do that, right? And as I said, I'm a programmer, but it was enough to pitch the idea about the trailer and what the atmosphere of the game will be to my team. So obviously it would need a lot of more work to show to any kind of publisher, but still this is a tool that you can use, just cut out fragments from other video games to try to capture this image of the game you're trying to create. Okay, 7, turn your weaknesses into strength. I also pitched at the indie pitch last year at Gamescom, and this is what happened.
This game is based on a movie, Gravity. I don't know if you saw it.
With George Clooney.
With George Clooney.
And Sandra Bullock.
And Sandra Bullock.
Right, I saw it.
So
it was crap.
So, exactly, we took this crappy movie and turned it into a crappy VR game.
So now I'm intrigued. Tell me about your crappy VR game.
Okay. This was obviously a joke, but to have a more serious example, we pitched a game that was called Game Deck to a couple of publishers, and this game was quite complex in its like structure. It has two metagames, It has two metagames, one core gameplay loop, so it's quite complicated. And we knew, because when you're pitching your game, when you're thinking about your game idea, you know what your weaknesses are. So you can disarm your publisher or investor or whoever you're pitching to. You can disarm him by admitting that you know about those weaknesses, this is what you're trying to do with them, right? So for example, we had a problem, this is actually screenshots from this presentation. We had a problem that we didn't know where the weight of the gameplay is going to be. Is the player going to spend more time in the first meta or in the second meta or in the core gameplay? So where's the actual time weight of the player's investment? And we didn't know that because we knew that we need to create a prototype to actually determine that. So that's what we actually told them, right? In the presentation we got questions that prototype must answer. Where is the gameplay weight on which layer? So this automatically disarms your opponent, if you might call him that, because you admit to a weakness and you admit that you have a plan how to fix it. And it also shows, point 8, that you did your groundwork, okay? Because you need to show that you did it. You need to show that you research what other games like this are there. Or for example, if there is no other game, then is there a market, is there a target group for a game that you're particularly making? If there are games like this, how did they sold and why is yours better? And tons of other questions that the publisher may ask, and you need to always be mindful of your surroundings. Okay, I blew that one. So in the same project, Game Deck, we knew that this is a game that was based on, that is based on a cyberpunk science fiction novel, okay? So it screams RPG or maybe an adventure game, right? So we knew that we were gonna get a question, why don't you want to make an RPG, or why don't you do an adventure game? So we also put our in our presentation that this is our road. We thought about an adventure game, but we're not going to do that because this and that. We thought about an RPG, but we don't have any money and neither do you. So we thought about a cheap RPG, but then we have a problems with this and that. We thought about Sim Manager, and then we got into our actual idea, right? So you show them your train of thought, and that shows you did the groundwork. Okay, number 9. Help the person you're pitching to convince others. Very rarely, you're pitching to the actual persons that are going to make the decision. Usually you're pitching to a person that's very important and is a stakeholder of some kind, but in the end, he's not the decision maker. He's a producer or a publishing producer or whatever, and he has to go back to the board or to the CEO and convince them that, yeah, I think also that this is a good idea. We should actually help them. And to do that, you need to help him by creating, and we go back, by creating a really good pitch. So you need to have that pitch document, because even if you're doing an elevator pitch or a full pitch, by the end of the day, he needs to have something in his hands to go back to his boss and pitch your idea. Obviously, he's going to do a shitty job, because nobody's going to pitch your game as good as you did, usually, if you do that a good job. So have a pitch document, make it short, and it would be really awesome if you could make it look nice. Like, you know, it screams quality. I know it's petty, but even very smart people like CEOs, etc. I'm a CEO and I'm stupid, right? It's like I see somebody gives me a sheet of paper with text. If it has a nice art on it, it's like increased value automatically, okay? So try to make it look nice. Okay, and number 10 and final is that pitching costs money. To get money, you first need to put some money in. And prototype is obviously one of the biggest costs you're gonna ever have. But even if you're not going to do a prototype, you create a concept art or mock-ups or illustrations. And even if you don't do that, you have travel expenses. You need to travel to the place, to a venue, to Digital Dragons, or maybe abroad to Gamescom or whatever. And it costs money. And even if you're not going to do none of that because you're just going to send an email with a pitch document without illustrations, without the prototype, you still need to think shitload of much about your project and create a really good pitch, because the other way there's no chance you're going to get funded, right? So it takes time, and maybe students, I don't know if there are students in here, but every adult knows that time is money, so it also costs, even if you spend a lot of time. Okay. On the ending note, I would like to recommend a book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. This book that was recommended to me at a Reboot conference by Chris Avalon. It's actually a book on how to pitch, the last book on screenwriting you'll ever need. And the first chapter, if you're going to read anything, read the first chapter, is about how to pitch your screenwrite in a movie industry. And as I hope you got from this talk, we can learn a lot from the movie industry. They've been a lot longer in this than we have, and they really have many things figured out, so we can learn a lot from them. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions?
I wonder, is it legal to cut out the fragments of the film or game and use it to advertise your own game, your own product?
I don't care.
Okay.
No.
In fact, you can not to care, but if.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
To be serious, it's like. Yeah, it's like I'm not getting any money out of it. I mean, I hope I am, but I'm not putting it on YouTube. Obviously, I'm not stupid. I'm just showing it into like enclosed audience, right? Actually, YouTube, I unlisted this movie I just showed you of Detached, and YouTube actually flagged it. They said it's okay, but you're using like proprietary music, so all the revenue from ads are going to the owner. I said, I don't care, it's unlisted, right? But yeah, I don't think, even if it's illegal, like it's like senseless to like try to people to stop doing that, right? It's like people are going to do that. It's like people are you gonna, can you use a screenshot in your pitch, for example? If you're doing, I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is in the like in the industry, but if you're gonna write, for example, a paper, you can use whatever you want. Just say what it is. Okay. So, for example, maybe if you want to be 100% legal, all you need to do is at the end say, okay, I used 7, Blade Runner, Fugitive, this, and that in this cutout, for example, right? If you want to be like 100% legit. But to be honest, I don't think that anybody is going to care about it much.
Okay, so it is okay till we just show it to the producer or someone.
Yeah, obviously you shouldn't like broadcast it or
Okay,
anything like
okay.
on your channel because you don't have the actual rights to, for example, to this music, right? This music, it was a ripoff from some YouTube.
This trailer of Looper was on the internet. How did
Yeah,
you
it
find
leaked. It leaked many,
Yeah.
it like leaked years after
Okay.
the making of.
So
like years.
it was not published by the
no,
authorities.
no, no,
Okay.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Usually the first one is the hard one.
Okay, so thank you very much for the presentation.